Thanks for listening to the Healthy Church Podcast with Larry Barker and Drew Klein.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the Healthy Church Podcast. Larry, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing quite well. I'm just glad this is being videoed so everybody can see your shirt.
You like that?
Dude, you're looking good.
Well, you said Paisley. I guess maybe it's, I don't know
Well,
what it is.
Listen, Shelby would probably, if she was in the room, she'd probably be laughing because she gets on me all the time. I never get colors or patterns correct.
Well, that's boring, Larry. You need to get a little color in your life like this.
Well, I've just got on my solid black shirt. What's wrong with that?
Well, you're in good company. They say people, brilliant people like the Apple guy and Mark Zuckerberg, all those guys wear the same shirts every day. So maybe you're in that line of gurus. But this, for me, always means I want to be on vacation, if that tells you anything. But I'm going on vacation next week.
Awesome.
I'm taking my family to an exotic location of Puerto Rico. I'm actually going down there to preach at our friend Dr. Freddie's church and Church Without Walls. I'm excited about that for their 19th anniversary, so that'll be a fun trip. But we just thought we were going to do vacation anyway. I said, hey, they're having me come, so why don't we just
And what's interesting is Shelby and I are actually going to be on the island the same time y'all are.
Well, are you preaching?
I don't know exactly what all we're doing. Our good friend Elvis and we're going to be meeting with a lot of the pastors. I've been chatting with Freddie and the other day, and he told me about the anniversary services. So anyway, we'll have to see if we meet up. Great. If we don't, oh well.
Well, if you come, I'll have to bow for you to preach, and I wouldn't have the.
Oh no, we won't be there. No. I'm probably be in another one of the churches that Sunday. Yeah,
gotcha. Well,
he's planning on you, and he's excited. He's really pumped about it. You're going to enjoy that church. Shelby and I've been there before, and 19 years I think they're celebrating, aren't they?
Yep. Yeah, I love Dr. Freddie. He's a great man, and looking forward to being with his people.
He is.
What are we talking about today, my friend?
Well, I just was thinking about all the resources that are out there of how to share your faith and not making it a scheduled presentation. Now, we're not anti. There are times we've got to be ready to share the gospel, whether that's Romans Road or 3 Circles or Evangelism in One Verse by Navigators. And I'm actually throwing those out there because I will say this, Drew, if you don't have a way to share your faith, then you need to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to fix that. Matter of fact, I like what a good friend of mine said a few years back, and I've never forgotten. He goes, listen to their story, be ready to share your story, but always get to his story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we kind of wanted to talk about. I was talking to somebody the other day about, good soil that you're familiar with, also another tool that we have. And we were just talking about having a system. And, if you don't have a way of sharing your faith, you need to be ready. But we really want to talk about building relationships so that we can share the love of Christ with someone.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that because it seems like in the history of the church, the Big C Church, it has been almost removed from relationship. Evangelism is like a program or maybe a day or hey, we're going to go do a thing instead of, no, just live your life in a way that honors Jesus, and in doing so, you'll build those relationships you're talking about so that we can share the hope that we have within us.
Yeah, and we know in the Greek, in Matthew 28, go and make disciples, that it literally has the picture of as you are going. Mm-hmm. And I know it's a paraphrase, but I've always loved the message where it talks about Jesus in the flesh, where it says he moved into the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that imagery. And, we all live in a neighborhood, don't we? And you've been to mine, I've been to yours. We know we live in a neighborhood, and we have people around us. I had a great conversation with a neighbor for the first time the other day. Drew blew me away how it started, because he came over to compliment my azalea bushes, and I thought I'd butchered them, but they were blooming, and he was just pumped about it. And man, those are beautiful. What'd you do? And I just was honest and said, actually, I thought I really messed up. And he goes, well, you did something right. And so it's those kind of things, just always being aware and always being ready. And matter of fact, I've got like 12 resources in front of me, from 25 ways to be missional by Verge, to 7 simple ways to share God's love with your neighbors, to 10 simple ways to reach your neighbors. And you know what I've noticed? Greet people, talk to people, say hi, be friendly.
Right.
Your neighbors out in the yard, go outside and speak and say hi. And doesn't mean you're going to get to share the gospel right then, but it does mean you're building a relationship and you're getting to know them. And so we just thought we'd talk about some of these things.
No, I think it's great. I think to love your neighbor as yourself, then it's overstated and it's so simple, but how would I want somebody to treat me? How would I want somebody to serve my family in times of need, or just in where we live? How can we be a blessing to the people around us? That's what I would want. So therefore, let me do it, for those around me.
Yeah, one of the things that I saw that I love is just, here's how practical it is. Learn their names.
Yeah.
I was with a different neighbor the other day, and we were just talking grass. And we were talking yards, and you know how I travel, and I was just, hey, do you know somebody good? He goes, nah, I do it myself, and I know you do too. And he pointed over to a house. I don't know these people. I don't know that I've met him. He goes, now Rick there, he uses, and immediately, Drew, I loved it. I went, okay, Rick lives there.
Yeah.
So when I see him, I'm not gonna show off or anything like that, but when I do see him, I'll say, hey man, my name's Larry, I heard your name's Rick, to get the conversation going. But I think some people go, well, that kind of sounds silly. No, if you're really going to get to know somebody, you need to know their name, and that's the way you get started and go from there. I remember I was at a meeting some time back, and we were all trying to figure out who this one person was, and a lady in our office cracked me up. She goes, I know this is a novel idea, y'all, but I'm going to go over and ask him. And she did. She just tore over there and said, listen, I'm sorry, I should probably know your name, but I don't. And the guy really appreciated that she just took the initiative to ask. So learn their names, and particularly in our culture, the importance of that.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's right. Really good. And if you can, learn the wife or the spouse name. Absolutely. And the children's name, and begin to build those interest points so that you can have deeper conversations.
Yeah, because when you learn their names, then you can begin praying for them by name.
Exactly
begin
right.
Praying for them intentionally and regularly. And here's something I'd tell anybody listening: how many people that do you know that are far from God that are on your daily prayer list? How many people by name are you calling out? And it's not a competition. Oh, I got 5, you got 7. No, but something's wrong when we're praying for everything else under the sun, but we're not naming people that we're building relationships with, so that we might have a conversation with them one day. And something else I found out, Drew, that's actually a good thing to ask them. Hey, is there something I could pray for you about? And
Sure.
Or they mention a challenge, and I've said, hey, if it's okay, I sure will be praying with you on that, and asking. And I've never had a little awkward just because they don't know what always to say. But I've never had anyone get mad or upset, that we're wanting to pray for them. They appreciate that concern that you're showing.
Right. I think it's a great way just to kind of let them know, hey, I'm a believer in Jesus, and I pray about different things. I'd love to pray about that for you. because I think anybody that I've ever expressed that to goes, wow, thank you. It's never been a please don't. I've never gotten that from anybody. So that's just a good way of sharing who you are, where your faith lies, and how you want to be a blessing to them in that way.
Yeah, and the next one, I'm a little hurt because you haven't invited me to this yet, but have a cookout and invite somebody to it, and I'm waiting for my invitation, Drew.
Okay,
I'm sure it's in the mail.
Yep, can't believe it's lost. Maybe what happened?
Yeah, I love it. But no, man, have a cookout and have friends. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do there. And of course, I'm just having fun with you because we're good friends. But man, cook a little extra casserole and take it next door, or cook a couple extra dozen cookies and take them next door. And I told people for years when I was planting up in northern Illinois, if you really get in down and discouraged, let me tell you what you ought to do. Bake a bunch of brownies and go to the nursing home and go door to door and hand people 3 or 4 brownies. And I'll tell you, it'll change your perspective. But get your eyes off of what you want and you think you need and begin reaching out. Man, a cookout, a casserole, some cookies, whatever that might be, take it over there and offer it to them and say, hey, was just thinking of you, and just be a good neighbor.
No, I think that's good. And as you're talking about that, I'm reminded of something that Jesus tells his disciples when he sends them on mission in this way into towns, and that is to accept whatever's given to them, because sometimes it's not just making things for other people, but like accepting what they've given to you as part of this relational exchange. We had a neighbor come over not long ago, and there's a little bakery here in West Little Rock that has these cinnamon rolls that are big as your face. They're just unbelievably wonderful. And she brought over a box of these huge cinnamon rolls. She goes, hey, I was just thinking about you guys, and just brought them by. And normally, I like you're saying, you want to think, what can I do to go? But it was such a blessing to receive from her. And then make that exchange. And another thing, my wife's father passed away about a month ago. And our next door neighbor made they're an Indian family, and they made some Indian food for us. And we were so excited. And just even receiving and giving, it kind of goes both way in that relational dynamic for relational equity when we're trying to build that relational capital, if you will, for this witness, for this opportunity to tell them about Jesus. It goes both ways, receiving as well as giving.
Yeah, and I love that relational, what'd you call it?
Equity?
Equity, because that brings us to another thing. Our culture has moved to the backyard. Mm-hmm. And I think something we need, if we really want to meet people and build that, we need to get out in the front yard more, because that's where we're going to see people, and that's how we're going to. Man, I was out front in my yard the other day, and the guy across the street walked over, and he said, what are you looking for? And I said, well, somebody put my garbage can up. And he looked at me and goes, that'd be me. And I went, well, man, thank you. He goes, well, I think they caught you off guard. They ran a different day. I said, yeah, I forgot about the holiday, and that backs it up a day. He goes, I saw it sitting there, and I said, well, man, I can never return the favor. Let me do that for you. But just things like that, doing acts of kindness for our neighbors, just go a long, long way.
Sure. Love it.
Yeah. So think of ways. I mean, cut their grass, or rake their leaves, or shovel their snow, or take out the garbage. When I was planting up in Illinois, and by the way, it gets cold up there, and we get a lot of snow. And
that sounds wonderful right now, by the way.
Oh, it does. In this weather, it does. But somebody was plowing my drive, and I was trying to figure out who. It took me quite a while to catch them at it, because they were always trying to do it at a time that either we weren't awake or that we weren't there. And it just, I know what a blessing that was to me. So just think of ways that you can be a blessing. Dave Ferguson has that book on Bless. and it's the acronym, and I just love it. But, begin with prayer, listen to their story, eat with them, serve them, and then, only then, and I shouldn't say only, but usually the next progressive step is, well, now I have the ability to speak into their lives and have a conversation with them because of that relational equity. That was a good one, Drew.
I don't think I can claim that one, but thank you.
But it was good. So think of that. And there's just all kinds of seasons to do different things. The other day in our neighborhood, I saw a young man knocking on my door, and so I went out and he said, "Hey, my mom and I, we want to put a sign in your front yard because it was 4th of July Day parade, and they were trying to let people know where to line up." I said, "Absolutely." And he goes, "Wow, thank you." And I was sitting there thinking, they must have been told no quite a bit
right.
for me to get the reaction that I got from that teenage boy. I said,
"Sure."
I said, "Well, buddy, it's a sign. It's not a big deal." He goes, "Well, we really appreciate it." And I said, "Well, you're very welcome." Just things like that.
Yeah.
Be a good neighbor and reach out. About the front porch, I actually remember going to my grandmother's and sitting out on the front porch. And even after it got dark, calling over to other neighbors and people driving by and walking by, and all the activity was up front. But at some point in time, because we just wanted our privacy, and if we're not very careful, and Christians do it also, we pull into our garage, the garage door closes, we never see anybody else, we go to our house in our backyard, and that's where we exist. So we got to get out of that and get out where we can see people and meet people.
I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but the Kansas City guys, the friends of ours, went to one of their houses, Rob, and his garage is totally set up, and it stays open half the time. But he's got some old sofas in there, one of those big propane heaters, and a big screen TV. And so when they play the Kansas City Chiefs games or they play some college games, he opens the front, he opens that garage, and it's like, "Man, come hang with me." It's just an open invitation to the neighborhood, and that's where he does his church plant, right there in his neighborhood. But it's exactly what you're talking about. We're available, we're here, and we want to be with you. Come hang with us. And so I love that whole concept.
I love it too. And I was at a training with church planning, leadership fellowship, leaders fellowship, and one guy was sharing that very idea. And he said, the first time he did it, he had one rule, and the rule was no Christians allowed. He said, "One thing I didn't plan on was I needed to send my wife and kids to another house because of the language being used." And but you know what? He didn't cut it off. He didn't stop it. That type of thing. Why? He was building and you got to expect, if you're going to get out of that bubble and you're going to reach out to people far from God, guess what they're going to act like? People far from God.
That's it.
They don't think the way you think. They don't talk about the things you talk about. They're not involved in the things that you're involved in. But we're here to go to them, and as we go, invite them into our lives and make a difference in that way.
Well, and it's a different time. You were talking about your grandmother's house and stuff. Not long ago, one of my neighbors, a couple of houses down, was his yard. There was water bubbling in his yard. I could tell one of his sprinkler heads or whatever was messed up. So, and it's dark outside, but I could tell. So I noticed it, and I went to his front door and rang the doorbell, and which is a little sketchy in our current time. And sure enough, he comes to the doorbell, and he's holding his pistol down to the side, and he says, "Oh, hey, Drew," but he's got his pistol. And he's like, "Hang on just a second." He puts his pistol on his dining room table. I'm thinking, wow, is that really where we are? I mean, it's a different time now. So having grace for those people, but he knows we love him. We bring stuff to him. We do that kind of stuff. And it wasn't that long ago, he brought a bunch of stuff and said, "Hey, maybe there's some people in your church that can use these goods," and brought a bunch of stuff to us. So that stuff happens. And so, being graceful for those who are just being who they are in their own brokenness in the middle of this current culture that we live in, seeing them for they
Yeah,
are.
and on that, go for a walk and prayer walk, man.
Yeah.
As you walk,
Yeah.
pray for people. But I've heard a great dynamic from several people have told me this. They said they have met more people in their neighborhood by walking their dog.
Yeah. Yep.
Just by going out and walking their dog and conversations start. I had a conversation with a guy walking his dog out in front of my house the other day, and he was going by, and I was busy and I was into something, but I didn't want him to walk by and without chatting with him. Now I got to admit, the conversation went a whole lot further than I expected, but it was great. And,
it didn't start with "get off my lawn," did it?
Exactly. Exactly. But I just said, man, how you doing? And we all know how hot it's been lately. Of course, he started, man, it's so hot. And we just started talking and had quite a conversation. And I just think a lot of times we forget to be aware and forget to be intentional. And saying hi and being kind can go a long way. And you know what? If they don't want to chat, you're going to be able to tell it pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
Not in an ugly way, but if they're going. I remember a long time ago, I thought, Drew, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to join the gym so I can witness for Jesus. And I found out people don't want to talk in the gym. Most of them have their earbuds in, and they're listening to whatever, and they're there to get their work in and get out. And I thought, well, so much for that idea. It was a good idea. It just didn't work practically. So just be innovative, man. Go for a walk. Here's another thing. Those HOA meetings, attend them. Go to them. Yeah, it doesn't mean go to gripe and complain, but go to them, be a part, meet people, and contribute, and see what you can do, and meet people. When I first planted this church and got involved with it, one of the first things I did is I got involved with the Chamber of Commerce, and just what can I? And I ended up on the board. I still don't know how that happened, but just made great relationships and built things with people to make them aware, hey, our church is here to serve this city. We're here not to take. We're here to help and to give any way that we can. And sometimes people don't even know who we are, and they don't know that we exist. What's that saying about, if your church would close down, would anybody even notice?
Right.
And that's a great question to ask.
Well, and you ask it to yourself, if you were to move.
Yeah.
So you make it personal. If our family wasn't here, would this neighborhood notice?
Yeah, I like that.
And one of the things the KC guys also do is a thing called, I think it's either 100 fires or 1,000 fires, but they encourage kind of a men's connection in your neighborhood with different men. Hey, I'm doing a fire in the back. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk, and we may even do a book study on what does it mean to be a godly father or something. Would you want to join us? And so even those kinds of things, engaging men, just where they can walk down and hang out with some other men, you might be surprised at what that opens up in conversation for the gospel.
Absolutely. And I want to mention this again, even though I mentioned it already. But, man, just go and Google 25 ways to be missional. And that document will come up by Verge. And they've even got another one, 25 more ways to be missional. And I think also then sit down with your people and talk about it. And you know what you'll find out? Your people will have better ideas than we do. Yeah. Have you ever thought about doing this? Have you ever thought about doing that? And I mean, there's all kinds. I mean, there's game nights and board games. And we have a good friend that has planted a church in Northwest Arkansas by doing board game nights in a coffee shop. And now there's a New Testament church there because of it. So there's all kinds, block parties. We've heard about those and how those can be done. And do an Easter egg hunt on your block, not just at your church, but do it with your neighbors and do it on the on your street and get people involved. There's barbecue night. Who doesn't want to be a part of a barbecue night?
You make me hungry now. Yeah.
I'm telling you. I'm
Fired
telling
up.
you. Just all kinds of ways that when I go on trips, a lot of times I've got a couple of neighbors that we talk coffee. So when I go, I'll bring back a coffee from the country that I've been in, and say, hey, I bought this for you in Portugal. Oh, Larry, what? Oh, man, you don't owe me anything. That didn't cost hardly anything. I knew you loved trying. You're gonna have to let me know. And I loved what he said to me. He goes, did you get one too? I said, oh, yeah. He goes, well, then we can talk about. I said, absolutely. You fix yours, I'll fix mine, and then we'll compare notes. Just things like that.
Yeah,
just
right.
The opportunity that we have every time to touch someone's life.
Yeah.
And,
Good.
I heard, go ahead.
I was just going to say, church leader, don't expect a member to do this if we don't. I mean, it's just that simple. Lead by this, It's good.
Yeah. Well, you said somebody really smart one time said, speed of the leader, speed of the team. And we're still trying to figure out who that guy was that I copied what he said. But but it's so true. Do it yourself in this area. Lead by example. And this is more, and here's another old adage we've used for years, but this is more caught than taught.
Mm-hmm.
We can stand up and teach it all day long, but you just gotta catch this and it needs to be our lifestyle. Matter of fact, I made a comment yesterday in the message that the Christian life isn't a way to live life, it is life. I mean, it's the very essence of being friendly and being kind and being gracious. And I've always loved the story. Shelby was flying home one time when we were missionaries by herself, and she had a problem with her ticket. She stops at the service desk. The person in front of her is an American. And this guy just almost puts the lady in tears. And Shelby is just aghast. She's just shocked. She's concerned for the lady. And then she steps up to this lady. And, of course, the lady was very reserved, very cool. And Shelby said, I am so sorry. And the lady looked up, and Shelby said, not all Americans are like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady said, well, thank you. How may I help you? And Shelby, of course, Shelby's as sweet as they come, and we know that. Yeah. But watch this, Drew. This doesn't happen to me. It doesn't. Maybe that's a statement itself. The lady worked for Shelby for a while, and she goes, oh, Miss Barker, a seat in first class just opened up. So now when I go through airports, I tell Shelby, you go to the counter.
Yeah, you handle this, honey, please.
You handle this and see what you can do. But you know what? A little bit of kindness. We've said it, but it's true. It just goes so far.
It does.
It goes so far.
It does. And that's all we're talking about when it comes to the people around us. And by the way, your neighbor is anybody other than you. Yeah. Not just the person that lives next to you. It's like, to love your neighbor is to love those in your family, to love those at work, where you play. There's all sorts of neighboring that can be done around where you live and do the things that you do.
And that's a great segue to mention a website that has a tracker for you of who lives around you, and that's blesseveryhome.com. And you can go there, and then you can actually have them in your phone. You can have their names so that you can begin praying for those homes. Mm-hmm. And you say, what do I pray? How about praying that God will open the door for you to be able to be a friend to them and build a relationship with no ulterior motive, just to love them like Christ loves us and show them that love, and then see what God does and what happens out of that. But let's leave that up to Him. Last time I checked, the Bible says one planted, one watered, but it's God who gives the increase. So we can plant the seed and we can keep watering that seed and then just allow God to work on their hearts and in their lives.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if you do that, let us know how it goes, because I believe God will show up. I believe He will give you that opportunity, that supernatural conversation on the street or at the post, at your mailbox or whatever it is, at work, whatever it is. We want to hear about it. I would love for somebody to let us know how that goes. But that does happen. As we pray, God shows up in supernatural ways to move that gospel forward.
Yeah, and there's something else I want to say here too. We kind of, inferred it and referred to it a little, but get creative.
Mm-hmm.
Get creative. Don't be afraid to get creative and think things through. And you just never know what might happen. Not this last winter, but a year ago, Little Rock got hit by quite a snow. And I was out of town, so I called my son Benjamin, and I said, buddy, I got a lot of trees. Could you run over and just make sure everything's okay at our house with as much snow and ice as you? He said, sure, Dad. It turned into quite an adventure. Well, your neighborhood's kind of like mine, and getting to our houses, you go downhill to our houses. So Benjamin was trying to get out, and he couldn't. And finally a guy saw him, and Benjamin said, sir, that's my dad's house. I came over to check. Is there any way out of here without going up a hill? The guy just laughed at him, said, you haven't been in here a lot, have you? He goes, no, there's no way out of here without going up a hill. And Ben said, oh, he goes, but I got a 4-wheel drive. He goes, let me pull you up the hill. I'll get you out of here. Now, what a great opportunity, Drew, for me because he just lives down the street from me. And as soon as I got back and was able, I went down there and knocked on the door. And I said, by the way, that was my son. I just came down here to thank you for helping him out. And he laughed. He said, yeah, he was wanting a way out of here without a hill. There ain't one. And we just kind of laughed. I said, yeah, I know. But that just meant the world to me, that you went the extra mile and you helped our son. And there's another lesson. Say thank you and show appreciation for those who help you. And then look for ways to return that favor, and that builds that neighborhood community spirit that, hey, there are good people that care about me, love me, and want to invest in my life and hear my story. I really do count.
Yeah. God's not only calling us to invite people to church, but to be the church where we live. And that's what we're talking about.
That's a great point. It absolutely is. And it's not an either or, but I think we've forgotten the one big time, haven't we?
Yep.
It's all about an invitation. It's all about giving them a flyer about our church, and we're not against those things. We're just saying we need to really pick up our game in this area of loving our neighbors, blessing our neighbors, being there for our neighbors, building relationships with our neighbors so that they know that there's someone that they can count on. I mean, it was a small thing, but the other day Shelby and I are flying out of Europe, and there was a lady, and we could tell she was American too. We heard her speak, and we understood her language, but it's just kind of cool. She steps over to us. She goes, "Hey, I heard you two talking." I said, "Yeah." She goes, "It's a little embarrassing, but I need to run to the restroom. Could you guys watch my suitcases and bags for a second?" Absolutely. And just out of doing that, Drew, we started a conversation. And began talking about where we were from, what we were into, and I got to admit, she had no interest in discussing anything spiritual, but I also didn't force it,
Right.
I just wanted her to know, and that that's okay, and she had a bad taste in her mouth, but maybe if a lot of us would love people like Jesus love people, we could remove some of that bad taste.
Yep. It's important, right? Jesus said it's the most important thing that we do, to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So that's what we're talking about today. Friends, thank you so much for watching the Healthy Church podcast. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to just have some conversations around these relevant topics as pastors and church leaders. And it's always a privilege to do it with my dear friend Larry. Larry, I thank you for the idea and the time today. If we can help you, please let us know, info@healthychurchpodcast.com, and we'll talk to you next time on the podcast.
For more information and other resources, go to healthychurchpodcast.com.